My favorite anime archetype then is in genre sense or in a character sense. Okay, I guess I would say a selfless selfless suicidal main protagonist or a tsundere. Those two are my favorites probably. So I used to watch back in I think 2005. I watched Eureka 7, and I watched I think the first 26 episodes. And anyone who's seen Eureka 7 will know that at the very end of about 25 or 26, the show could have ended because it's the end of the first season, first block rather. And so it has like a very clear point where they could have ended it, and that's kind of what I assumed because that was all that was released Western until then. So for about 4 years, that's all I believed was there, and I didn't want to finish it until years later. But between when I finished it and when I started, it was about another year until I saw Code Geass, and that was what really started everything. Because I just thought it was I just couldn't believe it. Like, I thought it was always really cool. I would always stay up really late before all this and watch like Dot Hack Sign and stuff. But that was more or less kind of just, I don't know, the allure of the Adult Swim midnight run block rather than, I guess, what it was. I wasn't very conscious of what anime was. I think Code Geass was one of the first times where outside of stuff like Naruto, where Naruto I was very conscious that this was anime. Code Geass was a show that I went into, and I was also very aware that this was anime, this was Japanese animation, and not a Western-made show. Instead, it was an Eastern-oriented one instead. And so I'd say Code Geass really got me started with it. And then I would watch weird stuff like, Kimi Kiss Pure Rouge. And then I think I watched Negima, then Love Hina, then Melancholy Heart Suzumiya. And after that point, I don't really know. All I know is that I used a site called Just Dubs, which is a since defuncted illegal streaming site, which is ridiculous. Because it was, as the name implies, it was just subs. I was very narrow-minded. I remember the first time I experienced subs, I didn't really think of anything about it, because that's when I used to watch YouTube videos of anime episodes in parts, because YouTube had a limit of 10 minutes per clip. And so what they would do is they'd have, like, for instance, Code Geass episode EP13 part 1. And it was just the most heinous way of watching anime, but it was the only sufficient way of watching it on my newly released iPod Touch first generation. And so that was the whole rationale behind that. And then I kind of just expanded from there. So I'd say 2007, 2006 was when I really got into it. And I first came exposed to it around 2005, though. 2006. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. One of my interpretations of that, without going necessarily into it, is since he had a Geass passed to him from C2, he inherits the properties of C2. And C2 exhibits traits of immortality despite any kind of, any kind of bodily danger, as she did in the first episode when she shot in the head. So I think that kind of will answer my question. I think that he inherits the code. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. It's my favorite character of all time, and my favorite ending of all time as well. It's like my favorite. It's really good. That's just a lot of my life is regret like that. I watch a lot of anime and don't review much, as anyone who knows of me would probably know. I release like one video a year for the past 2 years, I think. It's just awful. I'm actually approaching the 1 year anniversary on my last upload, which was the Kill la Kill review. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. And I think that it's something that I'd like to just kind of put to the forefront is the idea that there's a lot I want to make. It's just a matter of time management. It takes so much to make a review that I just can't do it for everything, and I can't just do it without basically 14 days of unattended, complete free time, which is extremely rare in the working world. I work for a school now. I work for Columbia College Chicago as a teacher's assistant there. I work in an animation studio, and but outside of that, just finding that much allocated time is really hard. So I would just like to thank anyone who has stuck with me despite all of the content that I have been putting out. I've just been doing really kind of poor half-assed live streams of me just doing random shit, be it playing League of Legends or just animating or like doing something like just in Photoshop. You know, I try to keep my audience engaged in some way to, I guess, almost make up for the fact that I am so inactive, that I am so lazy. But I still want them to know that, you know, I still care. Like I still am very an approachable person. I'm still very easy to reach out to, as is very evident by, you know, me even being here. You know, I'm very much willing to do things with the community, and I'm not just kind of off in my own little like isolated world where it's like, yeah, this is my channel. Okay, do not talk to me. Like that would be really ridiculous if that was the mindset. Because I think that a question that I always loved to ask myself and just anyone who's a YouTuber was, if YouTube removed comments, would you make videos? And my answer is always no. I would immediately quit YouTube. If there was no feedback or immediate direct input, there would be no point. It would be a completely masturbatory function that I just wouldn't see the point in. Oh, that's true, that wasn't... Yeah, back when that was going on. But yeah, I do remember that. And that is kind of the truth, though. It's like... If you, like... I think it's like in Google Plus, you put plus and then Holden Reviews, I think, is what you do now. I think? I don't know how Google Plus works exactly in comments, but... If you do that, or if you, like, cite me, or reply to a comment I've done, and it's like a question, or something that can be replied to, I, like, 90% of the time I will. Or just my Twitter, @HoldenReviews. If you want to have your mind blown, though, kids, I highly recommend typing in on your URL bar, Holden.reviews and pressing enter. It'll take you to my channel. I've bought .reviews. I also bought HoldenReviews.com, but Holden.reviews is my favorite thing to do. I think it's just really funny that Holden.reviews is like a website, but I made it auto-path to my YouTube channel now. It's just a really funny side note. But yeah. Try that out, kids. It's cool. Yes, my man, Josh F. I've known Josh for a few years now. I think 2. Since before Hummingbird started. Back when it was in beta, I think I was user number 47, I believe. And so what happened was, Josh got in contact with Garant and approached him and asked him about the site. Because Garant was a much bigger entity than me at the time. And then, so Garant showed me the site, and then when Garant, for reference, is Gigic, in case anyone doesn't know who's listening. But so, Gigic told me about the site, so I checked it out. And there's a pre-approval process where you input your email address, and then Josh would basically hand approve it for access to the beta version of Hummingbird. I put in my thing, which is Holden Reviews at, I think, Yahoo or something, or at Gmail or something, whatever the YouTube one is. And he saw it, and he immediately approved me because he recognized the name. And then I talked to him because of that. Because I was like, oh, so you've heard of me? And he's like, yeah, dude, you're a part of Pataku and everything, and you make reviews. And so I talked to Josh outside that via Skype and stuff. And we found out that we both live in Chicago. And so we've met each other. Our first time meeting each other, we met at P.F. Chang's, which she paid for my Chinese food. He buys me lunch a lot, actually. He's a great guy for that. And then I would ultimately, the only most monumental moment with me is whenever I met him with Pataku, as it was, which was back at that point, it was Gene, Garant, Tristan, and me. And so that was really amazing. I loved that. There's actually a vlog I edited a long time. I think it's on the Pataku channel. It's the second vlog. It's the panel. And it's like the last 5 minutes of it. At one point, you see Josh and his wife and his lady friend Ashley, and we were all just there. I think it's always just really cool looking back at that. How much, like, I don't know how many people I knew on frame at any given point. It was so crazy. One of my favorite moments with that. But yeah, that's how I met Josh through all that. I haven't talked to him in a while. That said, me and him are still on very good terms. He's still my good friend. Last time I directly talked to him was, I believe, Project Sweetwater, or Sugar Water, I think is what it was, which was a Hummingbird plan where we kind of all just said our thanks to Josh, which is really great. I just thought it was really funny that when we did that, I believe the man was Daniel who made it. And what happened was, I thought it was really funny that we had all these people kind of giving their own testimonials of like why Hummingbird's a great site and why we're thankful for Josh. And everyone was kind of doing this thing where they're like, yeah, thanks for this stuff. And I'm like, thanks, Josh, for just, buying me lunch and shit. And just the disclaimer at the very bottom of the video, not the video, but like the comments, the links, the description, was just special guest Holden reviews. I thought it was just really ridiculous that like I somehow superseded the importance of every other person in that video, despite me not thinking that at all. That I was one of the people, but apparently the person making it was like, no, Holden, you're important. You need to be at the forefront of this. So I thought it was really funny. But yeah, so Josh is a really great guy if you haven't met him in real life. Yeah, he's always working his ass off on a site. Yeah, Josh is really cool. So Josh, if you're listening to this, you should buy me lunch. What really started it was that me, Gene, and Garnet were already friends talking in our own little group, just the three of us. I think one time Tristan reached out to our group, the three of us, the pre-Podtaku is what we call it usually, what was the Gene, Garnet, Holden phase, the pre-Podtaku, and then Tristan contacted us to do a video with him on a seasonal chart thing, since he was going to do it anyway. So he decided to bring the three of us on, and we with the three of us agreed to do it. And so episode 00, the Holden Encyclopedia, which is the first episode, we just kind of made that first episode, and it was a great time. That was, I think, I want to say 2 years ago now. God, it's been a long time since we made our inaugural episode on Podtaku. As far as how it exploded, I think the biggest contributors are just the people on it. I think that we were, at that time, we were such a big group of individuals. Because, if you look at it, like, at that point in time, at that exact, moment on YouTube, we had, pretty much the biggest anime reviewers in the community. It's still to this day, to some extent. Or if we wanted to do that, we would still have everyone. Granted, things are, always changing, and, with stuff like J-Taku and everything, and our recent hiatus. But I think what really kind of catapulted it was just, it was something to listen to that was enjoyable by people, starring people that the viewers seemed to like for some reason. As far as why they liked us, I have no idea. They could be their own personal reasons. Maybe they sympathize with Jean and her ways or something, or Tristan and his analytics, or Garant being British. But there was something there that people just really attached to or latched onto. And so, that was really great. And I think that's what really kind of drove the success of Podtaku to where it is today. Even though right now it's in this cryogenic state where it's in suspended animation. But even so, we'll get back to it someday. It's just our real lives have all just kind of hit this point simultaneously where our lives are all drastically changing. I'd say that anyone who wants to do something like that with your friends, just go ahead and try. Do it while you're young. Do it while you're not in college. You can try it in college. It's just a little bit more difficult with everyone. But I think that it's just amazing that, we started that when I was in high school, and I'll be graduating in a year. Garnet was still in college when we started it. Tristan was in college. Just everything has really changed recently, and I think that's the biggest reason as to why it's come to this halt. It has is everything about the entire dynamic is just not the same. Because real life circumstances have intervened since then. Not to say we're done with Podtaku. It's just that's kind of where we're at the moment. Yeah, I think it's always really kind of important to realize that, people like Tristan and Garant and Jean, Not myself, but they're all full-time workers. I'm a full-time student and part-time worker, and so it just becomes a much more difficult process than it once was. That said, it's it was something that I always looked forward to. I wish we did it more often. I wish we'd still do it more. As far as are we dead? No, I wouldn't say that at all. We've always just been kind of trying to change and evolve because we always feel like we kind of reached the point where we've always been like, oh, well, we've already beat this format down. Like, I remember whenever we started using the ability to, whenever we got the formula to make the lights show up with wave patterns, and people were just blown away by it, and they were like, what the fuck is this? Like, how did they do this? And that's kind of like the next step, right? Is we're just trying to kind of reinvent the wheel in a sense, where we're trying to keep the same thing but have a new presentation and like a new formula to it, rather than keeping it the same. Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest thing, right? Is just improvement, right? I think that's always like a really big thing that people kind of neglect. I guess once you find success, some people tend to just, yeah, and they're just like, whatever, right? Because it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I'd say if there was one thing that would define Holden Reviews as an entity, that channel, it would be completely the idea of progression. That channel, I purposely leave stuff up there that I'm not really proud of because I want people to see where I was at one point and where I am now, and just how different it is. How like I sing, like, whenever I started my first review and stuff, in comparison to like where my last one was with like Photocon or something, where I just, I in a sense, I've seen so many. It's really interesting for me, being this old timer, I guess, in the anime review community, despite only having like 12 reviews. I think 12 reviews. And there's all these kids who are just coming into the community recently, and it just fascinates me. I love watching them, and just seeing how they kind of, take inspiration from other reviewers such as myself or Garin or Demolition D or people like Tristan, and how they're applying that to their own, unique style and calling. Because I think it's like, a big thing that maybe you guys have noticed as well is like reviewing has like had this really huge resurgence recently, which I'm really surprised by. Like, God, there's so many channels now that just do anime reviewing, and it wasn't like that when we started. It's really crazy. Yeah, I think that's something I'm always looking out for, so I can kind of suppress them and make sure they don't reach success. Because the last thing I want to lose is my A12 spot on the hierarchy. But yeah, I think that it's possible. I think that the biggest thing to realize is that I don't think necessarily we'll ever fade into obscurity or that we'll get replaced. I think people will just be parallel with us. They will be, because their goals will be separate but similar. The reason I bring this up is because, for instance, I think it's always really important to bring up the sense of YouTube fame and fortune. I think that, YouTube has become a viable source of income right now, with people like Tristan using it as, his entire job platform, as well as other people, such as, for instance, Demolition D, who uses it inside of his writing. And, Garin even at one point did it full-time before he had his job. And I think it's really interesting to see that, how YouTube has become much more than a platform for just videos, but also a career. And so I think it's really interesting how people are gonna, use that in the future. But yeah, I think that with maybe not even 1 in 50, it might even be less than that, because I think the biggest difference between when we started and when these people are starting now is that when you look at kind of just everyone here in the current state of the anime community, it's such a saturated market. When me and Gar and Tristan and Gene and everyone started, it was so devoid of content. There's this really great image I have using this government-based archival website purposes thing, and it's a Pantaku thing where what they have is it's a image of Pantaku. It's the website, it's the homepage in 2012. And Garant had 10,000 subscribers, and I had like 5,000, and Tristan had like 5,000, and Gene had like 4,000. And it was just, that image always takes me back, because it wasn't, we made this when we were just like people like everyone else. We weren't these huge entities at the time, nor are we now. I mean, I'm not trying to make 30,000 subscribers sound like a Congressional Medal of Honor or anything good, because, you know, I don't really think it is. It's just, you know, it's decent. I like it. I'm satisfied with it, I guess is what I should say. But, you know, I was still satisfied when I had like 100 subscribers, or, you know, when I had 1,000. That was a huge deal for me. I was unbelievably humbled and happy with just 1,000 people watching my content. You know, I couldn't fathom that, you know, because then you try to visualize that many people in like a room, and you realize just how many people that is. For me, that was my entire graduating class of 2012 in high school was 1,000 people, and it was a huge high school. So like back when we were at our graduation ceremony with our caps and gowns and stuff, I just kind of looked at the crowd of all of my peers and thought to myself, you know, like, this is what it was like to have this many subscribers at one point, you know. And it's just, it really just puts you in a state of disbelief whenever you put that many faces to that many bodies. Because as far as I'm concerned, you know, it's always just a number until you get a meaning behind that number. And that's why I love conventions, you know. You finally get to put a face to that number, right? It's more than a number now. It's a human being. Because it's really easy to kind of look at YouTube as this game from like a very superficial level of like, this number is greater than this number, this person's more influential. But it's different whenever you go to convention and you have someone come to you and they're like, you know, like, this review of the show of this movie that you did made me watch it, and this movie series really changed me, and I would not have found it without you. So I just want to really thank you for this. And there's something unbelievable about the entire idea that you can change people's, I don't know, perception of just this Chinese cartoons, I guess. But that you can touch people in a very small, minute way that you may not think is possible. And I think that's what's like where I really find my love for YouTube, is in your ability to affect masses in ways that you never thought possible. So I think that for anyone who does want to make YouTube videos or reviews or whatnot, and just a word of advice. First off, throw away your mic, get a new one, get a better one. My second word of advice, get an editing program. It doesn't matter what. It really doesn't. In fact, I was going to make my next review, or a review, in Windows Movie Maker, just to prove how to do it. Like, that it can be done. That you can make a quality looking review and everything with just the worst program imaginable. Because I don't think it's necessarily... You shouldn't focus too much on the visuals. I think visuals come with time and just experience with editing. But you should just focus on just kind of getting across what you want to get across in your words and what you're showing on the screen. Once you do that, then you can get crazy. Then you can become Holden reviews and just have like every 7 frames be like this crazy interpolated footage where he just meticulously carves out every character and just makes everything seamlessly flow into one another. It's really weird talking to myself in third person like that, but I always point to my Photocon review and just I love pointing out and just being like, this review, I spent so long making this because like every 7 seconds there's something that I purposely made in the visuals to just really bring it all together, and I loved it. It's my favorite review to date. It's as pretentious as it sounds. I love watching it, and when I watch it, I can't stop. I watch it all the way through every time. Granted, that only happens like bi-monthly or once a month. Because I look for motivation to make reviews is what I'm looking for. I'm like, man, that was really fun making that. You know, maybe you should make another one, you know? Maybe you should get off your sorry ass and just make another review, Holden. Because that is my biggest downfall. So my final piece of advice is be consistent and be humble. Be thankful for what you have. Even if it's just 10 subscribers, that's 10 people willing to watch your work and follow you until you put something else out. So don't neglect or take that for granted. Because man, those are the people that are gonna be there when you don't make a video for a year. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so that's my advice to any people who want to make YouTube videos. It's always interesting. What kind of editing program do I use? I use like a variety of things. I started off using Sony Vegas 9.0, and then I eventually transferred to my Karno Kyokai review. Was my first. It was my second Karno Kyokai review, Murder Study Part 1 specifically. That was the first review that I did in a program called Adobe Premiere. At the time it was CS5. And I use Adobe Premiere CS5 still. I also use a lot of Photoshop, believe it or not, as an editing program. Because when you're dealing with frames, you can deal with that, like work with them in Photoshop. You don't have to deal with them in your editing program. That said, I also use Adobe After Effects CS. Well, right now it's CC. At the time it was CS6 that I used. That was the first time I used After Effects. Was also the Karno Kyokai review, but the first time it really came to the forefront was my Blackrock Shooter review. Subsequently, my Photo Counter review as well. I would recommend against After Effects in Premiere, to be honest, though, because I think that using After Effects in Premiere is just too overbearing and overcomplicates things. I would honestly recommend using Sony Vegas 12.0 or 11.0. It does all of the same things Premiere and After Effects do at the same time, just in one consolidated program rather than using two individual. And I think it's a really big selling point. For instance, my good friend Alan Bakshift, he uses just Sony Vegas, and he gets everything you see in his videos. Every single thing is made in Sony Vegas. So Sony Vegas is more than capable of doing everything else that you can do in separate programs with Adobe, but it's consolidated. So I think anyone who wants to make good reviews, I'd say use Sony Vegas if you can. I'd say you can try Premiere, try After Effects, but don't expect anything from it. They have a huge learning curve, very difficult to surmount. Granted, once you get to a certain familiarity with it, you'll probably never leave it, like I won't. But that is what I use. I use After Effects, Sony Vegas, Premiere. Those are the main ones. Although you can also use Final Cut if you have that, because it's also a very good editing program that I'm very much like. I think it's really good. Yeah, I think, I've taken college courses on those programs. That's not how I learned. I was self-taught. But I think that, I don't know, just the way you have to learn it just doesn't justify the end result, I guess, in some ways. Or because the time spent, you could just be spending using Sony Vegas and just get things done faster. I only say this in your best interest as a reviewer or a video creator, because if you use something like Sony Vegas, Premiere, or After Effects, you will not get results fast. It's a very laborious process that there's no fast way of doing it, and it's gonna beat the shit out of your computer too. It's gonna take all the RAM you got, and it's gonna spit it right back out at you and say it's not enough. I usually go to bed at 2 a.m, so that's how I start my day. I go to bed. I wake up then at 7 or 8, usually 7 a.m, so I get my good 5 hours of sleep usually. I sleep on my couch. I don't usually sleep on my bed much. For reference, I live on my own. I live in an apartment with my roommate Terry at the moment. But I sleep on my couch, and then, which is in the same room as my computer. I get up, I go on my computer, I go on YouTube, I go YouTube, check notifications, go Twitter, check notifications, go to Facebook, check notifications, go to Crunchyroll News, go to Anime News Network News, and then just see what was released. And then I go on for my day there, and then I usually play League of Legends, and then I go to work or class, and then I come back and I play more League of Legends, and then occasionally I watch anime. League of Legends has been a recent fascination of mine, but this season I'm really close to being up to date. I'm only 30 hours behind, which sounds terrible, but it's only like 2 days worth of watching, so it's alright. Especially since spring break just started for me. But I usually just binge watch a lot of seasonal stuff at the same time. I usually try to get up to date with 5 shows per sitting. So I usually pick, for instance, 5 shows that I'm usually either close to being up to date with, or like close to, and then some farther away. So for instance, I'll watch something like Binan Koko Chio Bio Budlove, which is the Maho Shonen show with the magical boys. I'll watch like that, and then like Kantai Collection, and then like Tokugou Rudave, and then like World Break, Death Parade, and then I'll just go to sleep, and then I'll wake up and I'll just watch like like Saikano and Junketsu no Maria, Absolute Duo, Aldo Zero, go to sleep, Rolling Girls, Yurikuma. But that's how I do that. It's not that much of it's not that glamorous of a life. I live in beautiful Chicago, Illinois. That's probably my favorite part about this. My living is that where I live, I love it. It's beautiful. And recently it's been heating up. There's no more ice on the ground everywhere. It's not awful. But it's a pretty normal life. The only difference is, of course, I think probably the beginning. You just get people who are like, can you review this show or that show, or where's your reviews? Where's Podtalk? You just gotta deal with all those notifications at the beginning of my day. So I start off, answering stuff, and then it gets progressively better from that point. I don't know. I wouldn't say so, for me personally. I feel like I still really enjoy anime. I feel like the only time I ever feel like I'm working for it is when I kind of separate myself from what I'm watching for reviewing purposes, where I will watch a show and then I'll be like, oh, that was really cool, I want to review this, and then I'll watch it again for the much more like crucial intent on things and details, and then I'll write a review, record it, and then I will watch it again just to gather clips. So I'll watch it raw with no dialogue, like no subtitles or anything. I'll just watch it raw, just for pure like aesthetics, and I'll get my footage and whatnot, and then I'll bring that all into editing, and then I'll stare at those clips for 12 days usually. That's not even an exaggeration. It's like 12 days, and I will edit from that point. And that's kind of what the reviewing process is like, as far as that. Oh yeah, I think that would be like the worst. Would be watching going into something with the pure intent of reviewing it would really just defeat the purpose for me. It's still very much, anime watching to me is still very much about the enjoyment I get from it, rather than, I don't know, the financial gain that I could get from it. I think that would be ridiculous to just be like, okay, so I need to make the most bank by watching a Kamiga kill and then reviewing it, or just be like, okay, time to watch Death Parade, review it right now, get the bank. Like, I think that'd be ridiculous to just watch like the most high-end shows or something that you don't want to watch, rather, and just watching it to be like, okay, I need to review this. Like that to me just sounds like hell on earth. Like, I would never do that. What is this? Is it an alarm? Oh, it is. That was my alarm to start this, because Wexter is very rude and doesn't compensate for CST rather than, well, actually I think it's, what is it? I think it's EST. What is that? I'm trying to remember. I was in CST, Central Standard Time. But yeah, I have honestly a lot. There's a lot of crazy shit that always happens when I'm at a convention. I think the one that I would like, I don't know, I think the one really great one that I don't know if anyone knows is, it was the story of how what happened was, I went to like a convention, and then I went to like a rave thing. I don't know. It's like some kind of weird dance thing. And there's these people. So I was losing it first off. I was like this great. First off, preface. I'm a great dancer. Secondly, I remember this group of women came up to me and they're like, "Oh my God, are you holding reviews?" And by this point, just to like preface, I wear Hawaiian shirts. That was a very common attribute of mine. But I don't wear shirts underneath them when I'm at raves. I have my six-pack showing, or what I like to think of it as. So I just have the shirt unbuttoned always. And it just looks like, dude, he's like Miami Vice. Like, this guy's a thug. But this group of women approached me and they're like, "Oh my God, are you Holden?" I'm like, "Yes, I am Holden. That is correct. Who are you?" And they're like, "Oh my God, we're a big fan of everything you do," or whatever, and Pataku and whatnot. And then what happened was, I remember I went to their room and stuff, because they were like, "Oh, we're having this party and stuff." And I was like, "Sure, whatever." I was like, "I'm a cool guy." And I remember I didn't realize it at the time, and then when I got there, I by chance met my good friend Dakota Broski in the same room. And he goes, "Holden?" I go, "Dakota, what are you doing here?" And I also met Brooks there as well, or Subs and Dubs Reviews, in the same room. Like, what the fuck? And it was just this by coincidence meeting that we all had through these women that I thought was really funny. Just the way that it feels like such a huge world, but it's really smaller than you think. And I don't know. I really loved the idea that we just by chance met each other. These YouTubers who knew each other but never like met each other, I guess. Or that time we'd only met each other once. I always think it's really cool, just kind of the interaction with people at cons. As far as some of the weirder ones, of course, you get people who see like the Pataku crew or whatever, and they just scream, and it's just like, could you not? It would be great if you could just shut up. And they're just like, I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, why? Well, I was like, just calm down. We're just people. You know, just scream. And like, he's like, "I'm sorry. I was just really excited that I gotta meet Pataku." And I'm like, okay, could you just shut the fuck up for like ever? I get really pissed when people are insubordinate in public places like that, especially when I'm the cause. But yeah, screaming fans are probably the weirdest thing that I deal with at conventions. Or not I, but I don't know, anyone of notoriety. Screaming fans are never something that we look forward to. It's just kind of a byproduct of where we are. But yeah, I think that's one of the weirder ones. Just go to holden.reviews. It'll take you to my YouTube page. Yeah, just go into your URL just right now, and just Command T or Control T. Just type in Holden _reviews. It'll just blow your mind. But that's how you'll find me. It's been a great time here with everyone. If you ever want me to be on the show again for a less formal purpose, I'd be fine with that, guys, anytime. It's been great being here, though. Yes, guys, thank you for having me, and until next time, sayonara, see you later.